Once upon a time, in a large, beautiful forest, there lived a tiny sparrow named Spiri. She was the smallest bird in the forest, with soft brown feathers and bright, curious eyes. One bright morning, Spiri woke up early to start her day. She spread her little wings and flew high above the trees, feeling the cool morning breeze on her feathers. As she flew, she noticed something strange far away in the distance. A thick cloud of smoke was rising from the forest, and the smell of burning wood filled the air. Without wasting a moment, Spiri swooped down towards the river that flowed through the forest. She saw the flames spreading, jumping from tree to tree. The fire was getting bigger and bigger, and the animals were starting to panic. Some were running in all directions, trying to escape. Others were huddled together, unsure of what to do. Spiri knew she had to act quickly. Even though she was small, she believed she could make a difference. She flew down to the edge of the river, dipped her tiny beak into the water, and picked up a single drop of water. With her heart full of determination, she flapped her wings and flew as fast as she could toward the fire. When she got close enough, she dropped the tiny bead of water onto the flames. It sizzled and disappeared in an instant, not making any difference at all. The other animals watched from a distance and laughed at her. "What can a tiny sparrow do against such a huge fire?" a large buffalo said, shaking his head. "She's wasting her time." "She's too small," laughed a monkey swinging from a tree. The other animals continued to watch. Some were amused, some were confused, and some just felt sorry for Spiri. They couldn't understand why she was even trying. But as the minutes passed, something started to change. The great wise tortoise, who had lived in the forest for many years, slowly walked up to the other animals. He had been watching Spiri all along, and he saw something they didn't. "You see that tiny sparrow?" the tortoise said in his slow, deep voice. The other animals fell silent. They looked at the tiny sparrow flying back and forth tirelessly, trying to fight the fire all on her own, and slowly, something inside them started to stir. They began to feel a sense of shame for not helping. Suddenly, the elephant, the largest and strongest animal in the forest, trumpeted loudly. "If Spiri can help, so can I," he said, stomping his huge feet. He marched over to the river, filled his long trunk with water, and sprayed it onto the fire. The other animals were surprised, but soon they too decided to join in. The monkeys grabbed leaves and fanned the flames, trying to push the fire away from the trees. The buffalo stamped out small sparks with his hooves. The deer ran to the river to fetch water in their mouths, and even the tiny insects carried droplets of water on their backs. It was a sight to behold. Animals of all sizes working together, inspired by the bravery of one tiny sparrow. The forest, once filled with fear and panic, was now buzzing with energy and teamwork. Spiri felt a surge of hope. She couldn't put out the fire alone, but now she wasn't alone. Together, they could do it. But just as the animals began to feel they were winning the battle, the fire suddenly roared back to life. A strong wind blew through the forest, fanning the flames and making them leap even higher. The animals began to panic again. "It's too big," cried the rabbit, hopping nervously. "We'll never be able to stop it. We're going to lose the forest," a deer shouted in fear. But Spiri wasn't ready to give up. "We can do this," she chirped, her voice ringing out clearly. "We've come this far. We just have to keep going. Don't lose hope." Her words gave the animals courage, and they continued their efforts. The elephant sprayed more water, the monkeys swung through the trees to carry leaves faster, and even the small mice dug holes to stop the fire from spreading. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a loud rumble echoed through the sky. The clouds began to darken, and drops of rain started to fall from the heavens. The rain grew heavier and heavier, pouring down on the forest, soaking the ground and dousing the flames. The animals cheered as the fire finally began to die out, their hearts filled with relief. The forest was safe, the fire was gone. But the story wasn't over yet. Even though the fire was out, the forest was still scarred. Many trees were burnt, and the animals were exhausted from their hard work. Spiri perched on a tree branch, looking around at the faces of her friends. She had learned something important that day. It wasn't about how big or strong you were. It was about having courage and believing in yourself. But now, there was more work to be done. "We may have put out the fire," Spiri said softly, "but the forest still needs us. We have to work together to heal it." The forest was quiet, with only the soft patter of raindrops hitting the ground. The fire was finally gone, but the once beautiful forest was now covered in ash and blackened trees. The animals stood in silence, taking in the damage. Their home had survived, but it wasn't the same. Spiri, the tiny sparrow who had inspired everyone to fight the fire, sat on a low branch, her heart heavy. The wise old tortoise slowly made his way to the center of the group. "We've done a great thing today," he said in his deep, slow voice. "We've saved the forest, but now our next challenge begins. We must rebuild our home." Spiri flew up and landed in front of the group. "We didn't give up when the fire was burning," she said, her tiny voice clear and confident. "And we can't give up now. The forest needs us, and just like before, if we all work together, we can help it heal." The animals looked at each other, unsure at first. But then, one by one, they nodded. Spiri was right. They had come this far, and they couldn't stop now. The tortoise smiled. "Spiri is wise beyond her years. We must start small, just like she did when she fought the fire. If we each do our part, no matter how small, the forest will grow strong again." The animals spread out, each trying to figure out how they could help. The elephants used their strong trunks to clear away fallen branches and burnt debris. Spiri, even though she was small, had an important job too. She flew around the forest, carrying tiny seeds in her beak and dropping them into the soft, wet soil. She knew it would take time, but with each seed she planted, she imagined a new tree growing tall and strong. It gave her hope. As they worked, the animals began to talk about the fire and what they had learned. They realized that the forest wasn't just a collection of trees and plants. It was a community, a place where they all lived and depended on each other. And even though the fire had caused so much damage, it had also brought them closer together. "Do you remember how scared we were when the fire started?" asked a rabbit, hopping along beside Spiri. "I thought we were all going to lose everything." Spiri nodded. "I was scared too, but when I saw the fire, I knew I had to do something. Even if it was small, I had to try, and when I saw all of you join in, it made me realize how much we can do when we work together." The tortoise, who had been listening nearby, added, "Indeed, courage comes in all shapes and sizes. And now, as we rebuild the forest, we'll need that same courage to keep going, even when things seem hard." The days passed, and slowly but surely, the forest began to heal. Little green shoots started to sprout from the ground where the animals had planted seeds. Some of the trees, though blackened, began to grow new leaves. The animals worked tirelessly, each doing what they could to help. One evening, as the sun was setting, the animals gathered together at the edge of the river. They were tired from a long day of work, but they felt proud of what they had accomplished. "The forest still has a long way to go," said the deer, looking out at the horizon, "but it's starting to come back to life. We're making a difference." Spiri perched on a branch and smiled. "It's just like when I was fighting the fire. One drop of water didn't seem like much, but when we all worked together, we put out the flames. Now, one seed might seem small, but together we're planting the future." The other animals nodded in agreement. They knew that the road ahead would be long, but they had learned something important. It wasn't just about the big things. The small efforts mattered too, and with time, patience, and teamwork, they could bring their forest back to its former glory. As the night fell, the animals settled down to rest. The stars twinkled overhead, and the soft sounds of the forest, though quieter than before, brought them comfort. They knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they also knew they would face them together. And deep in her heart, Spiri felt a sense of peace. The forest would grow strong again, and no matter how small she was, she would always find a way to help. But there was still more to be done. The animals had saved their home from the fire, but there were still dangers lurking in the shadows, dangers that could threaten their new beginning. The next morning, Spiri woke up to the sound of birds chirping. It was a beautiful sound, one she hadn't heard in a while. The forest, though still recovering, was slowly coming back to life. The new shoots and leaves that had started to sprout the day before were now taller, and the animals were filled with a sense of hope. Spiri stretched her wings and flew out of her little nest. As she soared above the trees, she felt proud of what she and the other animals had accomplished. The forest wasn't completely healed yet, but the signs of life returning gave everyone new energy. She landed beside the wise old tortoise who was sunning himself near the river. "Good morning, tortoise," Spiri chirped. "The forest is looking better every day, isn't it?" She landed beside the wise old tortoise who was sunning himself near the river. "Good morning, tortoise," Spiri chirped. "The forest is looking better every day, isn't it?" The tortoise nodded slowly. "Yes, little one. The forest is healing, but we must stay alert. The fire may be gone, but we are not yet safe." Spiri tilted her head in confusion. "What do you mean?" The tortoise sighed. "There are other dangers, my dear. The fire was just one of them. The forest is a fragile place, and there are creatures who may wish to take advantage of its weakness." Spiri felt a chill run through her feathers. She had been so focused on helping the forest recover that she hadn't thought about what other threats might be lurking. "What kind of dangers?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The tortoise looked up at the trees, his wise eyes filled with concern. "I have heard whispers of a group of animals who don't want the forest to recover. They think that with the forest weak, they can take control of the land for themselves. We must be ready to protect our home." Spiri's heart sank. After all the hard work they had done, could there really be animals who wanted to harm the forest? She couldn't believe it, but the tortoise was never wrong. If he said there was danger, then there must be. "What should we do?" Spiri asked, determined not to let anything happen to her beloved forest. The tortoise turned to her, his expression serious. "We must gather all the animals and prepare. We need to work together, just like we did to fight the fire. Only this time we must protect the forest from those who want to destroy it." Spiri nodded, her small heart filled with determination. She knew what she had to do. Spiri flew high into the air, her wings beating steadily as she called out to the animals below. "Everyone, gather at the river. There's something important we need to discuss." One by one, the animals came together, curious about what was happening. The elephants, monkeys, buffalo, rabbits, and even the smallest creatures, like the ants and bees, joined the meeting. They trusted Spiri, and they knew that if she was calling for them, it must be important. "What's going on, Spiri?" asked the monkey, swinging down from a tree branch. "Is everything okay?" Spiri took a deep breath. "I've just spoken with the wise tortoise, and he says there's danger ahead. There are some animals who don't want the forest to recover. They want to take over our home while it's still weak." The animals gasped in shock. They had worked so hard to save their forest, and now they were facing another threat? "Who would want to destroy the forest?" asked the deer, her voice trembling. The tortoise stepped forward, his slow but steady voice calming the crowd. "We don't know exactly who these animals are, but we must be ready. The forest is still fragile, and we cannot let anyone take it from us." The elephant, always the brave leader, stomped his foot. "We won't let them take our home. We'll protect it, just like we did when we fought the fire." The other animals nodded in agreement. They had fought once to save their home, and they were ready to do it again. But Spiri knew that this time would be different. They weren't fighting a fire they could see. This was an enemy hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. It would take more than bravery to win this battle. It would take careful planning and unity. "We need to stay together," Spiri said. "If we work as a team like we did before, we can protect the forest. We'll need to keep watch over every part of the forest, and if anyone sees anything suspicious, they should let everyone else know right away. The animals agreed, and they began to organize themselves. The monkeys volunteered to keep an eye on the treetops while the elephants would patrol the ground. The birds, including Spiri, would fly above the forest, watching for any signs of trouble. Even the small creatures, like the mice and ants, promised to keep their ears open for any unusual activity. For the next few days, the animals worked tirelessly, not only to rebuild the forest, but also to keep it safe. They took turns keeping watch, always on alert for any signs of the mysterious animals the tortoise had warned them about. Then one night, just as the moon was rising, Spiri spotted something strange. She was perched high in a tree, her sharp eyes scanning the forest below, when she noticed a group of shadows moving silently through the trees. They were moving quickly, too quickly to be friendly animals out for a nighttime stroll. Spiri's heart raced. This must be the danger the tortoise had warned them about. She flapped her wings and flew down to the group of animals keeping watch. "There's something in the forest," Spiri said, her voice trembling. "I saw shadows moving through the trees. I think it's them, the animals who want to take over the forest." The other animals immediately sprang into action. The elephants, buffalo, and deer stood together, ready to defend their home, while the monkeys and birds took to the trees to keep watch from above. As the shadows grew closer, the animals realized they were in for a fight. But they weren't afraid. Just like before, they knew that if they stood together, they could face any challenge. The moon was high in the sky as the animals braced themselves. The shadows in the forest crept closer, slinking silently between the trees. Spiri's heart pounded in her chest, but she held her ground. This was their home, and they weren't going to let anyone take it from them. The elephants stomped their feet, creating a protective line. The monkeys swung through the branches, ready to act if needed. Every creature was on alert, ready to defend their forest. Finally, the shadows stepped into the clearing. To everyone's surprise, they weren't wild beasts or dangerous predators. Instead, they were a group of animals, wolves, jackals, and hyenas, led by a cunning fox. Their eyes gleamed in the moonlight, and their leader, the fox, stepped forward with a sly grin on his face. "Why are you all so tense?" the fox asked in a smooth voice. "We mean no harm, at least not to those who don't stand in our way." Spiri flew down and landed in front of the group. She might have been small, but she wasn't afraid. "This is our forest," she said firmly. "We've worked hard to save it, and we won't let anyone destroy it. Why are you here?" The fox chuckled. "Destroy it? No. We want to control it. You see, with the fire leaving the forest weak, it's the perfect time for us to take over. We'll rule, and anyone who doesn't agree will be pushed out." The other animals gasped in shock. The thought of losing their home to these greedy creatures was unbearable. The elephant trumpeted angrily, and the buffalo stomped his hooves. But Spiri didn't let fear take over. "This forest belongs to all of us," Spiri said, her voice strong. "Not just to the biggest or the strongest, but to everyone. We've worked together to protect it, and we will continue to do so." The fox sneered. "You think a little bird like you can stand in our way? What can you possibly do against us?" Spiri stood tall despite her small size. "I may be small, but we're all stronger together. Just like we fought the fire, we will fight to protect our home from anyone who threatens it." The fox's grin faltered. He glanced at the other animals, who stood side by side ready to defend their forest. The monkeys, the elephants, the buffalo, the deer, even the smallest animals like the mice and ants were united. It was clear that they would not back down. "Fine," the fox said with a growl. "If you want to fight, then we'll fight." But before the fox could take another step, the wise tortoise spoke. His deep, calm voice echoed through the clearing. "There is no need for violence. If you wish to live in the forest, you can, but you must respect the balance. This forest thrives because we work together, not because anyone rules over it." The fox hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "And what if we don't agree?" The tortoise smiled gently. "Then you will find yourself alone. Because here, in this forest, we take care of each other. That is our strength." For a moment there was silence. The fox and his group looked around, realizing that they were outnumbered, not by force but by unity. The animals of the forest stood together as one, and they knew that they couldn't defeat such strength. With a frustrated snarl, the fox turned and gestured for his group to leave. "This isn't over," he muttered, but it was clear that they had lost. The fox and his followers slunk back into the darkness, disappearing into the forest. As the animals watched them go, a cheer went up through the crowd. They had protected their home once again, not just with strength, but with courage and unity. Spiri flapped her wings happily, her heart full of pride. The wise tortoise slowly made his way to Spiri. "You have shown great wisdom and courage, little one," he said. "It is not always about being the strongest or the biggest. It is about standing up for what is right and believing in the power of working together." The other animals gathered around Spiri, thanking her for her bravery. She had proven once again that even the smallest creatures could make a big difference. Together they had saved their forest, and now it would grow strong once more. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm golden light over the forest, Spiri flew high into the sky. She looked down at the trees below, the animals working together to continue rebuilding their home, and she smiled. The forest was safe because they had all come together. No one was too small to make a difference. And with unity, they could face any challenge that came their way. Moral of the story: the lesson Spiri and the animals learned was simple but powerful. Courage and teamwork matter more than size or strength. Even the smallest among us can make a big difference when we work together for a common goal. By believing in yourself and standing up for what's right, you can overcome any challenge, no matter how impossible it may seem. If you enjoyed this story and learned something valuable from Spiri and her friends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another exciting adventure.